Hello and welcome to Clinical Optics Made Easy Quick Takes. Today we're going to talk just very briefly about spherical equivalence versus lens transposition. And the reason we're talking about these is because the formulas are easily confused. Here's a real life scenario. A resident is presenting a postoperative patient of mine, and the resident tells me the spherical equivalent is 0. What you see here are IOL calcs, and in a lot of IOL calcs, you have the power of the IOL that you have chosen and implanted into your patient during cataract surgery on the left-hand side, and right next to it on the right, you have spherical equivalence of what the formula is predicting that they will be postoperatively when it's all said and done. So if the resident is correct in telling me that the spherical equivalent is 0, then I was expecting minus 0.42, but I'm being told that we have 0 instead, and that means we have missed the predicted power by plus 0.42. The reason that that is very important is because I'm about to go in and do cataract surgery on the left eye, and I always want to know the spherical equivalent of the first eye so that I know my trust level of the IOL calcs for the other eye. Now, that doesn't guarantee me anything, but it makes me feel better if the calcs are spot on the first eye before you go in for the second eye. But here it's telling me that I'm off by plus 0.42 if the resident is correct. So before I continue on with that story, take a look at this refraction on top, minus 1.25 plus 0.5 axis 180. What's the spherical equivalent here? And can you transpose that into minus sil for me? Now, if you really quickly said the spherical equivalent is minus 1, and you easily transposed that into minus sil and knew that it was choice D, then you've got this cold. No need to listen any further. Go ahead and watch a different optics video. But if it took you more than half a second to figure that out, then please keep watching. So here are those formulas that frequently get confused. In spherical equivalent, we only take half of the sil and add that back to the sphere, whereas in lens transposition, we take the full amount of sil and add it to the sphere. Looking down here at the bottom, I'm showing you once again the postoperative refraction of my post-op patient, and the spherical equivalent was not 0 as I was being told. The spherical equivalent is 1/2 of that plus 1 added to the minus 1, so that my spherical equivalent was actually minus 0.5, and that was very close to my target of minus 0.42. So I was much happier. So here's the important thing of this talk. Why is it that only half the sil is used in spherical equivalent while the full sil is used in lens transposition? And how do you keep those straight? And if you've watched my other optics lectures, you know how much I love the conoid of Sturm. And so remember, the conoid of Sturm is where you have rays focusing into a vertical ray, and then the other rays are focusing into a horizontal ray, and the conoid of Sturm is the distance in between those two. I like to think of it as a rectangular box, but it doesn't matter. It's the distance between those, and whether it's the vertical that comes first or the horizontal that comes first, doesn't matter. You can see here in that first top box on your left that the conoid of Sturm is entirely inside of the eye. And you can see all the different scenarios all the way to where the conoid of Sturm is well outside of the eye. And we're going to use this concept to figure out why we're only going to use half the sil in spherical equivalent and the full sil in lens transposition. And when we have astigmatic refractive errors, we can fix that with a spherocylindrical lens, which is what most prescriptions are. It's a sphere plus some amount of sil, and that will put one end on the retina, and then it will crush that conoid with the cylinder part back to where it's all at the same place, because that's what you want to do with astigmatism, is get all of your rays focusing on one spot. If you don't use a spherical cylindrical lens, you can treat people with spherical equivalent, and that is putting the conoid straddling the retina so that half of it is inside the eye and the other half is outside. So to demonstrate this, we're going to use a compound myopic eye shown here. And remember, the conoid of Sturm is the distance between where one ray focuses and the other ray focuses. So you can see one ray in red there, the other ray in blue or teal or whatever we want to call that. And this conoid is sitting well inside of the eye, compound myopic astigmatism, and we want to correct that. So my first step is going to be to put sphere on it. And you can see here that I'm going to use a -3 sphere, and if I do that, I'm going to laterally push that conoid all the way outside of the eye, as shown here. But I need both of those rays to be in the same place, so I need to crush that conoid, and that's why I'm going to add +2 cylinder to do that. Now both rays are in the same spot. So this is how we correct that astigmatism with a spherocylindrical lens. But it's not the only option that we have. So let's go back to our compound myopic astigmatism eye, and let's fix it with spherical equivalent. To do this, I'm just going to put in a -2 diopter lens. Now my conoid is straddling the retina such that the same amount is inside the eye as is outside the eye. So it's halfway in between. So I want you to notice that the prescription that I used to create a spherical cylindrical lens, that spherical equivalent was -2. And that's not a coincidence. I want you to start thinking of the sphere as a lateral coordinate, something that I can move that conoid laterally anywhere I want it. And I want you to think of the sill as a hammer, and we're going to crush the conoid just like you were stepping onto a soda can. So to demonstrate that, here we have -1, -2, -3 sphere. As you can see, the more minus I put into the sphere, the more I am shifting that conoid to the right, away from the cornea. And I can take it, I can push it to where one end is up against the retina and the other end is still in the vitreous as a -1, or I can do -3 and push the entire thing outside. And that is the real difference between plus and minus sill. So if I have it inside the eye and I have a -1, I'm going to use minus sill to then crush that conoid, pushing that red ray back towards the retina. But if I use my lateral coordinate and set it to where the conoid is outside the eye by using a -3, now I'm going to use plus cylinder to pull it back towards the retina to crush it that way. That's the difference between minus and plus sill. Whereas the spherical equivalent, I used a -2 so that I could get 1/2 of the conoid inside the eye and 1/2 of the conoid outside. And the big question was, why half the sill in spherical equivalent? This is why. Because I only need to move it laterally 1/2 the length of the conoid. I don't have to move it the full length, or else I'm going to be a -3. I just want to move it halfway outside, halfway inside. So remember, spherical equivalent, we're only going to use half the sill because we want half inside, half outside. And of course, the reason we're using full sill in lens transposition, going from plus sill to minus sill, is because in minus sill, I want the full conoid of Sturm inside the eye or the full conoid of Sturm outside the eye. And that's the reason that in lens transposition, you take the full amount of the cylinder. So that's it. There's no more to the story. This is just a quick look at spherical equivalent, which is 1/2 the sill, versus lens transposition where you use the full sill. Thank you. Have a great day and keep studying optics.